Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fantasy Kingdom, and welcome to episode 4. Now, I know at the end of the last one I said that the next episode will be completing the front of the main street, but I just could not get inspired to do that. So, change of plan, I've decided to jump straight into the first themed area that I'm going to build for the park, and I wasn't entirely sure about how I was going to do this to start off with, because I've got an idea for another theme that I was thinking of tying in with it, so hence the two slightly different colours of water there. My original thought was we're going to put in the middle here a factory-esque style building that basically turns the water into dirty water. And then at the top we were going to have a different themed area, which was a lighter theme, and this would be the darker themed area. But then once I started building the coaster for this area, I decided that I needed more space behind with the same theming as down here. So the theming we're going for is post-apocalyptic, but in a sort of slightly different style, almost in an adventure style. But as the build progressed, it come together that we've got two slightly different areas still, although the top area is still part of the post-apocalyptic area. So it all comes together, although it's slightly different. You'll see what I mean as we get on with the build. Originally, I wasn't entirely sure what coaster to put in here. I was going to have two different coasters, one down the bottom here and one at the top, but they're going to be themed to different things. The idea for the theming at the top, which is now not going to be the same, might just end up going somewhere else in the park anyway, because I do still want to do something like that. But yeah, for now we're working on this sort of post-apocalyptic factory. Lots of different levels to it. Obviously the drain pipe at the bottom, which chucks out the sort of dirty sewage type water. You've got lots of supports, lots of sort of holes in the wall, lots of bits where they've patched up bits, sort of windows broken through and stuff. Just try to give it that sort of war zone like feel to it, which comes together quite nicely here. I love that you can recolour the water now. That's something that really changes. It's surprising that just changing the water colour changes the mood of an area so much. So that's a really nice tweak that they've added to the game. And I've actually gone back and changed the water colour around the weenie in the middle of the park as well, but you won't see that for a while because we're not really working in that area at the moment. One thing that I do want to try and do is tie different areas into each other. So I've got another idea for a theme that I want to go sort of in front of this, because there's a bit of space between this and the centre of the park, so I should be able to get another smaller themed area in there, which, like I say, which ties in with this area. It's difficult to know exactly where to place things when you start the park, so what I really should have done is sort of dragged out bits of terrain in areas that I want things, just to get an idea in my head, but I haven't done that, so we're just sort of winging it at the moment. Speaking of winging it, I hate puns, but we are going to have a wing coaster in this area, because that's what I decided would look good going through the middle of this factory or whatever it is. Obviously I took quite a bit of inspiration from Thorpe Park in the UK for this one. It's on a much larger scale, on sort of if Disney took the idea of the swarm and did it themselves. But I do think that is really cool theming, especially for a UK park. It's definitely my favourite coaster and theming that they've got in that park. So yeah, I thought I'd do my own sort of take on it. I guess Soar is almost sort of has that feel to it as well, the outside building. But yeah, that's definitely what the Swarm was going for, the post-apocalyptic feel, which is a sort of style of theming that I've always really liked, and something that I feel we could definitely represent in this park. So, like I say, stuff like the boarded up windows with holes in them. We're going to have sort of moss building, like ivy sort of stuff climbing up the walls. Just everything looking like it's been hit by a bomb, basically. And that's the idea for this area. Although this down at the bottom bit, how it turns out is more like a sort of almost like a jungle area, and then you notice that there's this sort of factory behind it, and this town that's been, gone through a war zone. It's been hit, it's been destroyed. There's like we build a few little details like a crashed plane and stuff like that, and that's the whole sort of storyline, I guess, behind this area. It is going to be that this factory sort of destroys the environment around it by pumping out all the dirty water and everything. But now, because the whole area is going to be post-apocalyptic, that doesn't really work as a story. I'm not very good at making up storylines anyway, to be honest. I'm probably worse than I am at names, hence the fact that this coaster is going to be called Apocalypse. Yes, it's not the most creative, but I think it works absolutely fine for this coaster. So yeah, like you can see here, we're building up all the moss and stuff. I think these are just bushes from Foliage Essentials, but sunken into the wall a bit so that they look like they are climbers, or creeper, or ivy, however you want to call it. I love that little drain pipe, actually. That's one of my favourite sort of touches. That's from Future and Space Pack. Oh, no, it's not, sorry, I tell a lie, it's from Cyberpunk Land, which is another great mod. We've got some other new mods actually we've been using in this build, like the Anigates, which are new fences and gates that can be resized and recolored and stuff, which are very, very useful. But I need to look on the workshop because I'm sure there's a couple more that have come out since I've started this series. And I like to use my mods for these sandbox parks. So, moving on to the rock work then, I cut out some of the rock work during the filming process because it is pretty boring to watch someone place hundreds and hundreds of rocks in any games. Obviously, if you know Planet Zoo, you'll know that that's pretty much what Planet Zoo is about, placing rocks, so you can't really cut it out and then builds. But no, it is a lot more than that, but it is a lot of placing rocks. Whereas in this game, I find that rocks don't work in every build, but for something like this, I've almost used them as if they're like a landscape where it's rubble everywhere, if you know what I mean. So rather than using them as rocks as such, they're part of the actual terrain itself, if that makes sense. And using the flat rocks and stacking them on top of each other is quite a nice technique to get that sort of look. Also, they make the water look a lot better because it's sort of flowing off the rocks and bouncing into them. You can use a little splash effects and stuff. Got some really new cool effects as well that come with the last DLC, which I've enjoyed using in this build as well. But yeah, I did have a reference image for this build. I just searched for post-apocalyptic stuff. It could have been from a movie, it could have been from a video game. I've got no idea what it's from. But I just sort of built it up using that idea and other ideas I had in my head. And yeah, it's a random combination of things, to be honest, but I think it works together pretty well. In fact, I would go as far as saying this whole factory style building is one of my favourite buildings that I've made in the game so far. So we'll see how the rest of the series pans out. But I'm quite proud of this one, to be honest. It's completely different. I've not really tried anything like this before. And it's so nice to be doing these sort of themes that are completely like fantasy based rather than like on the heavily theme park I did before, which was Europa Empire. I was building lands that are basically different countries from Europe, is the idea I was going for there. So I built like Greece and Italy and stuff, and I'd try and copy their architecture, but that was more realistic in a way, I suppose, whereas this is just completely fantasy. I probably will go back and try and add more backstagey bits to this building at some point, but a lot of it you will see from every angle while you're on the ride. So I do believe that if this was whoever, like Disney or whatever, it would be an actual full set piece in real life. Although I'm not as entirely sure how that type of thing works. I think usually they sort of build coaster layouts with the intention that you'll only be seeing certain parts. So obviously behind that they can put the backstage and stuff. But yeah, for now it's fine like this. I just want to get the general idea of everything together. There's still an awful lot more scenery that I put into this build itself. There's some, obviously you can see the sort of pipes and stuff going in here. I try and do them all custom. There's loads and loads of small details that go into this part of the build. Not even entirely sure what everything's meant to be, but like I say, it comes together all right. It all seems to work together quite well. And it's definitely my favourite part of the area that I build in this episode. So I'm going to leave you to enjoy the time lapse. As usual, we'll talk near the end, and you'll see my coaster build as well. So enjoy. Hi then folks, so as you can see the coaster is in place. You know I'm not the greatest coaster builder in this game, I'm far better at scenery. I really tried hard to make this a decent layout. It's not entirely realistic anyway. There's very few places that you'd see this amount of scenery around a coaster. So I did have to, obviously, because I started building the scenery first, I had to make the coaster work around it, and that is the main reason to not go with my original idea of having a lighter theme up the top bit, and I just went for more post-apocalyptic stuff. But this top section is less sort of ivy growing up the buildings and stuff, and it's less planting and less greenery, if you like, and it's more industrial and like a town. This building here we're working on is a sort of broken, like smashed up apartment block, similar to the buildings that are in the DLC campaign level. Was it Celeste Mountain? Which I think was based on a video game which follows that sort of post-apocalyptic theme. I don't really know a lot about games other than these ones that I play, so I couldn't tell you what it's originally inspired from. But that's the sort of feeling we go for with this one, and I just put a few fog effects inside so that you can't really see in there that much. And yeah, we're using all sorts of techniques like barrels on fire, burnt over, different like stairs and stuff to be like sort of the area where the workmen would get in before all this happened, obviously. And then the water, all this sort of murky water running through the middle as well. And I wanted the dive loop, is it? That might not be the right word, but the half loop section anyway, the coaster to go through the middle of that first building that I made, so that's the centre of the area, and that's the sort of focal point. That's the point where you'd stand there and take the photos of. So yeah, rate my coaster building skills. I'd rather you just rated my scenery building skills, to be fair. I've tried to take into consideration things that people have said. I will be changing the end of the layout as well, because I know it looks far too long, too many straight pieces. That will be changing in the next one, because we're about halfway through this build of this area of the park. Thank you very much for watching this one, and I will leave you with some cinematic shots, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Bye bye.